Hello, and welcome back to Real French Connections. This is part two of our chat with Eric and Jen, who moved from Arizona with their two young teenage daughters all the way to Mougins, which is a little village just above the hills in Cannes. You'll love this episode. There are so many funny stories of settling into their new life. And if you missed part one, do go back and watch it because it contains a lot of information and insights and observations. We think you'll love it. I think that your point about people being prepared for things to be trickier than you imagine, that's just France for you.
Yeah.
Everything is a little bit more complex. And you are right. When you look on the French government website, it looks as though things are clear, but there are just many, 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 many strands.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
But some people know that and some people don't. So actually, what's happened is sometimes I'm stamped out and then not stamped in, or I'm stamped in and not stamped out. It's just it's France for you, isn't it? The good and the
Yeah.
bad.
See that?
We noticed it even, you could tell that our visas, that because each of us were tied to one of the children, and the
Oh, is
process.
that how it works?
So when we submitted everything, we went in and they had one of us tied to one and one of us tied to another, just to make sure that they knew who the guardians were and everything went together. But
Yeah.
the paperwork we received back with our visas was different in each of the packets.
Oh,
And so, like, there was a piece of paper inside of our girls' visa that says, you have 1 year and then you will basically be expelled from the country. And and of course read it and we're like, oh my gosh, what is that? And then of course come to find out, clearly what they don't want is parents come in with children and then the parents leave and the children stay.
yeah.
And so it says that, of course, when we renew our
Is that not an
visas,
option? We can leave our kids?
we can leave them. And yeah, so it was interesting 'cause we were like, well, it says, our intent was we filed for the first year. And then while we're there, we were going to file for the longer term. And it says, like, after 1 year, you must leave the country.
The
And
kids, yeah.
on our girls, and we were like, oh my gosh, was something different. So it's just, again, the way they do things, the way they process things. If we didn't have someone there helping us understand why their visas look different than our visas, you'd wonder, oh, why is it done that way? And yeah, we've had a
Yeah.
number of different things where, depending on even setting up our bank accounts,
Yeah.
Eric had different challenges than I had for our bank accounts, and we're required that we each have our own account, and sending our wire transfers to start, they needed wire transfers from each of us to show as signatories on the account. And we sent in wire transfers and they said, okay, great, now we need an additional one from your wife because it is her account as well. And we're like, but it's a joint account. So there's just
Um,
there's red tape that you never can prepare for, and you kind of have to be willing to accept the idiosyncratic way about it,
yeah.
which is very rich in
Mhm.
and of itself, and
And
it
that's
can't
where
be
you
helped.
really come to understand the differences, isn't it? I mean, I guess that's why we all travel. We travel, getting back to your point earlier, Eric, of places starting to feel homogenous. And that's, I think, there are a lot of the same shops, there are a lot of the same retail outlets, a lot of the same restaurant chains. But then when it comes to France, because of the administration aspect,
Hmm.
I think it'll always be that little bit different. It's just
Hmm.
a little bit
Yeah.
more convoluted or complex.
Yeah.
Um, Definitely a difference there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we're taking it in stride. We're embracing it as we're here. And I think, the thing that we keep telling our kids is, how great is it that we have an opportunity to experience something so different, because it changes your perspective, it changes your worldview, it changes how you are willing to adapt to new things. Because if we just kept our children in the exact same environment and they never got uncomfortable, how are you setting them up for success in their later adult years when maybe they move to a different city or a different state
Yeah.
or a different country? And we want to fully prepare them for embracing that the world is so much bigger than the microcosm they think it is
Mhm.
at 11 and
Absolutely.
13.
You're
Now, at
building
11,
two global citizens there. And
We hope so.
yeah, where are you living? You obviously, because you're on a sabbatical, presumably you found a house to rent rather than to buy initially.
Well, we've been,
Right.
yeah, we're in a house that we've rented that we have the ability to stay here for an additional year.
Great.
So we're just down from the village in Mougins, and we've got a great family home here that, like we said, we wanted to replace the comfort of home when we were
Yeah,
here. So
yeah.
It's French style. Everything in the US, we've taken it and it's like half or two-thirds the size. The
yeah.
cars are smaller, the house is smaller, smaller, it's smaller.
The roads are definitely smaller up
The
there
Oh
roads
my
are
in
gosh.
the,
Mougins,
oh,
so you wouldn't want a
That's another thing I would say. If you
whole other
people that
topic.
are moving to France, be like, are you prepared to drive a car that's 1/3 the size of normal in the States?
Right.
Well,
And are you
actually, you'd be well advised to drive a car 1/3 of the size, or you will not get it through those village little ruelles, will you?
and our street is no exception to that, because we have one side where there's literally a house that kind of impedes
Yeah,
into
it's
the
2 meters
road.
wide. It's
And
got it's 2 meters, and I think it's even less than 2 meters. I think it's 1.9 meters.
yeah.
The road literally just right out of our driveway
So,
here.
how many times do you find people arriving with big cars getting just that tiny bit
Back
stuck?
up, truck, come up,
But
I
that's
said
good.
back up, back up. We can't get through. We have to pull in our mirrors to get through the
Yeah.
street. The
Wow.
little,
We have a
uh,
neighbor that told us a story about, because we're close to kind of, and French drivers, if there's traffic, they'll try and navigate around another road.
they'll park
Um,
anywhere, they'll drive anywhere.
yes,
It's just,
yeah.
it's amazing.
So he said, in prior years, someone tried to come up with a camper van up the street, and he tried to
Oh,
tell him never fit. And he said, but I'm French. It's fine. I'll make it through. And sure enough, he got about another 20 yards and stopped, and you'd see him backing.
oh
All
no. Gosh, you should
cars.
take a little video, just a little phone video of all these people who get stuck. It would make such a funny clip, wouldn't it?
It's wild. And
Yeah.
it's amazing though, when we started here, driving was something that, you get in the car and you have to prepare yourself for battle in the roundabouts. And it was kind of anxiety inducing coming here and learning how to grocery shop and learning how to do everyday things that at home feel very basic, very
Effortless. Yeah.
easy. You don't really have to think about it. You can get in your car and go on autopilot and go shopping at Safeway or Trader Joe's, and it just seems intuitive.
Yeah.
Here, I would say after 4 months, the things that felt hard feel easier. I wouldn't say they feel easy yet, but they
Easier, yeah.
feel easier.
Yeah.
I think that's a testament to how quickly, you can come and you can assimilate. And if you're really going to embrace the experience, it should be about.
But there's, and as you know well, I'm sure it's not that different in where you're at in the Luberon, but there are, if you want to continue, shall we say, a more Americanized or Western approach to your shopping, you can do it here. You can go to the large supermarkets, you can go to
Yeah,
the large,
true. So
markets.
true.
Conversely, what we love, and I think what a lot of people just, that's just so fascinating is, we go down to Marsh Bourville and Cannes, and there's every, local producer. We have our cheese guy, we have our favorite little butcher, we have our pasta guy who comes over, drives over from Italy, and every little, everything is a little handmade. The flour,
My
people
flour.
there,
So
just
I will say the one thing we got very, very, very lucky with, and this has a lot to do with all the research that we did. We knew volleyball was going to be very high on the list for us. The girls have played competitive volleyball. And the brilliant thing is, volleyball in France is a huge sport. So we weren't coming and our children were playing a sport that wasn't nationally recognized. And frankly, with the French men's team winning the gold medal, more kids
that would have really helped.
And in emailing with the volleyball club that our kids eventually joined, the owner of the club works for a company, and he and his family took a sabbatical to the States when they're girls. So they have two girls. They had children who went on sabbatical. They moved to California. And Eric and I are both originally from California. So there was kind of this serendipitous link that we had a communication with a family who took two young children to the US. They lived there for 2 years. And then they came back. And so we'd communicated with them, and then we, got to the volleyball club, and I feel like we spend a lot of time apologizing for the fact that our French is not great. But saying we're learning, we're trying, we're getting there, but you know, what you learn in formal French is not how you speak
No.
conversationally in real life. So we got there and it was pretty obvious from the beginning. We were the only fully English speaking family
Yeah.
that was trying to join this team. And the owner of the club says, I feel like you need a proper French introduction. We'd love to have you and your family over for drinks. Their older daughter, or our older daughter, and their younger daughter are about a year apart in age. And so one recommendation I would make to anybody who is moving to a foreign country, find someone who is a local, who is willing to take you under their wing.
Yes.
And, you know, for me as a wife and a mom and the person who does the majority of the grocery shopping and the cooking and all of that, figuring out those things are challenging. So having a French friend who went, this is where you're going to try this. This is where you're going to go. Here are some places to try. If you're looking for things, I will tell you, historically, I am a very good cook. I have failed spectacularly in France on a few things.
What do you mean to find ingredients that you're used to
finding
cooking?
ingredients or not knowing the difference in the ingredients here.
Right. Oh, yes. Okay.
I mean, where do you find baking soda in the States?
Oh, baking soda is complex. It's there though.
Yeah,
And
it's
here,
a cleaning
you're
solution
down cleaning
here.
supplies. You're like, I'm not going to
yeah.
eat a cleaning supply. No, it's a cleaning supply.
And flour. I mean, I was
There are lots of
absolutely
flowers.
flabbergasted. You can't find all-purpose flour. I mean, flour at home, you buy it and you can use it to bake anything. I tried to make something that I make at home and the ingredients were the same, but the collective did not create what it did at home. And whipping cream. It was funny because we got here and I'm used to, I was buying all of these amazing ingredients. I'm going down to the farmer's market and and I would come home with all of this and I would try it. It just would not come together. And the girls were like, what is
happening with your cooking, Mum?
But come to find, it's just you have to find your version of those same ingredients, and they're not the same here. Butter, flour, you know, sugar. Finding powdered sugar, it's not actually powdered sugar here. So that's been a fun experience. So having a French friend to help navigate some of those things has been monumentally impactful. Yeah, so it's been, like we said, all in all, I would say overall, it's been an overwhelmingly positive experience for us, even with feeling uncomfortable or feeling like things are different, which is not necessarily a bad thing.
No. And those little victories do really count, don't they? The more familiar, even when it comes down to, you were saying, the flour and the sugar, once you know, you know. And then suddenly you are at ease.
Yeah, and I think for people that are contemplating a similar move, I think they need to be they need to know themselves and their family needs, and then to laser focus on, okay, what type of experience they're looking for. If they're a family and they have younger kids and they want to immerse them fully into the French culture, then okay, then you're talking about putting them in French school.
Yeah.
You know, that was not our approach because our kids were older and they would have floundered in the full French school.
But for younger ones, you're right. For younger
But if you
ones,
had, there's just so many different approaches to this. It's not a one size fits all. I think most Americans would do very well in the environment that we're in because it's so international. You don't feel like a fish out of water.
So you've got to really understand where your core family unit is going to be stretched well beyond where it normally would. And how are you going to find ways to support each other in ways that you've never had to before?
really,
and we're finding that with our kids that, you know, academically they're doing great, but they're relying on us to help them work through some of the emotional challenges they've never felt before, but also being willing to go out and be uncomfortable every day and find your people, find your French friends willing to tell you that, you know, hey, spectacular failure on a cake. You know, you just didn't know what you didn't know. And also being willing to accept that there's so much that you don't know. You're not going to be the expert moving here.
But
And you're
aren't
gonna
they sometimes some of the there's some of the things there that make you laugh as well. And there's some of the things you'll look
Oh,
back
yeah.
on and think, oh my God, the day I made the cake with no self-raising flour and it was flat as a pancake, and I've used that recipe for, you know, every day for 10 years, but it didn't work here. Those are the things that mark that difference, aren't they?
Yes.
That's the richness.
My girl said, okay, we just really want pancake mix. So Eric took Claire
Oh,
on an adventure to Leclerc, and they decided we're going to go find pancake mix. Well, what we know about French labeling is that it is very deceiving as to what the picture on the front of the packaging is,
even the
and
word,
what is actually
it said pancake
What was it
something, but
all puffy and puffy on the
So
label?
it actually was a brown bag that said Blune on the front of it, and Eric was like,
boom,
"This isn't
boom pancakes.
yeah
I'm like, this is great. It says
pancakes."
pancakes. It's got a picture on it. It's clearly, it says on
So
there.
they get home and they purchased 8 packages. So
Oh, Eric.
pancake mix.
They were
This is
small.
it.
They were
They're little. They're all little size.
They were
So
like 250 gram little
so
packages.
they get home and Claire is so excited and we're gonna make pancakes. And I open it up and I'm like, the consistency's weird. This is not pancake mix. And I, of course, then go read the label. No, it is a key ingredient for pancakes. It's brown sugar.
It was just brown sugar.
So they're small packets. So we have
Quite a
enough
lot of
brown
brown sugar.
sugar to last 6 years. So I put together the recipe. We make now my daughter decides I want to do this myself. And she goes in and we have the list of ingredients. It's an American pancake recipe. We're ready to go. And she makes the mix and says, okay, Mom, I'm ready for you to put them in the pan. And I'm like, the mix looks funny. And she's like, I can't figure out what's wrong. And I was like, did you put the flour in? And she's got stuff out. And I said, what did you use? And she pulls out the box that has maize on the front. And I was like, sweetheart, you use cornstarch instead of flour. And she's
Looked like
like,
flour.
it looked like flour. It was a box and it has, you know,
Yeah,
and
it
it's
does
the
look like flour.
no, it was cornstarch. That's
We didn't
the
eat
second
those.
fail. We didn't eat those. So we dump out the mix and she's devastated. She's embarrassed. And I was like, listen, you just have to laugh at this. So third time, we finally get the right flour, no cornstarch. We use the brown sugar that we now have 5 years supply of.
Cinnamon and ginger
The
from
fresh
the spice
cinnamon and
market.
ginger. And they
So-
turned out to be the best pancakes anyone in the family
Hey.
had. But it took us all, again, working together, supporting each other in ways that we never would have to at home,
No.
working through challenges that would never be challenges at
Yeah.
home.
I
And at
love
the end
that.
of the day, we all went, these are the best pancakes we've ever had, but they
I
were
love that. What a great story. One last question then. 2 last questions, but little questions. If there's a family watching this, a family with kids, early teenage kids, a yes or a no, what would you say to them in a nutshell?
yes, but set realistic expectations. And when you are having challenges, call us because we'll laugh about them. Yeah.
I would just
Great
add to
advice.
that. Of course, we only know our experience. I think in general it is, I think you pointed out earlier, it is easier when your kids are younger. We felt like there's this kind of golden window opportunity where they're old enough, this will really imprint on them and will help guide them in their future life experience. Now, granted, if we brought them over earlier and we knew we were going to stay for the entirety of their primary education, that's different. But when we thought, okay, we've got a 2-year window, when is that perfect time? So there's no perfect time, but I think that we knew that window was closing with our oldest, just turned 13. In the States, she'd be considered a 7th grader. Here, she's in year 8. And I think if we'd waited a year or 2 longer, we would have been met. And one of my good friends back home, they moved to Spain, and his oldest was a year older, and it was very challenging for them.
Yeah.
So I would say with caution that if your kids are older, just be prepared. It can be more of a challenge.
Yeah.
And the other thing I would say is, again, this may not work for all families, but involve your kids in the process.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like,
Good
don't
advice.
think you're just going to move this and plop them in and kids are plastic and you're going to love it. We started talking about this with them
Long
long
before.
before, 2-3 years ago.
Yeah.
And the same sense, I don't believe in kids driving the bus, but being an active participant on it. We drove the bus, we drove the decisions, but getting their feedback, and so that way they were already starting to process and
Yeah.
prepare themselves for it.
They were bought in.
They had
They
they
have
had the
some ownership, don't they? They
conversation.
have some ownership of this adventure.
And
Yeah.
we weren't dragging them here kicking and screaming. They
Yeah.
came they had expectations for what they wanted this
Yeah.
to be as well. But I would also say, if you're going to do this and everything that you're going to do this, really make sure you like your spouse.
I'm taking that as a fact that you two
Yes.
really
Yeah.
like.
We have said
We did great. We've done great.
Yeah, we have other
But-
friends that have said, "Oh, we see it and it looks like this magical experience," and oh, we think we're going to do that. And knowing our friends, were like, we would caution you to maybe go to some couples therapy before you undertake a project like
Yes.
this. So make sure you really like your spouse and make sure you're willing to have the hard conversations with your kids, both before and when you get here. I mean, they're trying to go through all of those same challenges as kids, but in a different environment here. So, the things that they're now exposed to here, it's different.
One other thing, I know we're out of time, is I would say to any parent with preteen or teenage, I would hands down give France a 10 out of 10 on is the social media here is so low.
Yes.
And for parents that have kids that are just sucked into that, it is such less a thing here. We are already starting to see our kids tack, as much as we're not technophiles. Our kids had limited access to things back in the States.
But we saw where we were going to start losing that battle by being parents who our kids didn't have cell phones. They didn't and still don't have social media. We saw that
Kids aren't on social media, but still.
We were quickly becoming obsolete in that avenue, that we knew that our kids were going to continue saying, we're the only ones that don't have it.
Yeah.
That's not the case here.
Not the case here.
So if you're looking for a low tech, very heavily family involved, the families here are very involved in the good ways, not the overbearing ways, but like parents are there for all of the activities, and family time is key.
Precious.
That is where France has been overwhelmingly positive for us.
I'm so honestly, it's so gorgeous to talk to you. I can't wait to meet the rest of the family and have an update.
It'll be fun.
Good.
And let's organize that. And just in the couple of minutes we've got left, for French Connections HCB, your advice for people coming over?
I would say embrace it. Embrace that you don't know what you don't know. Let HCB guide you, and in all of the ways, just understand that things will crop up. So have the right people in your corner that are going to help you overcome those obstacles.
The most succinct way I can say it is, look, you're going to make a million decisions and have a lot of stressors. The last thing you need is to stress about all the things that are hardwired and well known, and to make basically a plug for all the great help that we got. It's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
And we've already our friends that are considering this said,
we've already made the recommendation.
Make one phone call Richard, plug in with them, and you're going to have a lot of other challenges and stressors.
Make it easier for yourself.
Make it easy.
Yep.
Just hit the easy button. It still won't be easy, but the easier button.
The easier button is a nice way of putting it.
Won't regret it.
Thank you so much for chatting today, and let's talk again soon.